Most people don't fail at life. They just keep hitting snooze until their potential forgets their name. And the tragedy, it doesn't happen all at once. It happens quietly, one morning at a time. There's a sound most people never hear, not because it's too soft, but because they've trained themselves to ignore it. It isn't the alarm, it isn't the screaming clock. It's the bell. The one that only rings when you're honest enough to listen. It doesn't ring in your ears, it rings inside your ribs. Not with noise, but with knowing. You've heard it before, in that split second before you rolled back under the covers. In that flicker of guilt after you said, tomorrow, you didn't silence it. You just decided it didn't matter. And now the days blur, the fire dims. The life you meant to build waits in the shadow of your hesitation, but the bell still rings. And one man heard it when the world around him went silent. In a Nazi death camp, poet Andrzej Strejkowski stood barefoot on ice each morning at roll call, lips moving silently. He was composing verse in his mind, verse he couldn't write, couldn't speak aloud, only repeat within himself over and over. When asked later how he survived, he said, "In the rhythm of verse, I remembered I was still a man." That's the bell. It's not about success. It's about remembering who you are before the world edits you. Every morning you delay isn't just a missed opportunity. It's a quiet betrayal of your own becoming, because your identity isn't shaped in public. It's shaped in silence, when no one's watching, when you choose. Listen to this daily, and you won't just wake up, you'll awaken. Not to your schedule, or your goals, or your feed, but to the person you swore you'd become. And if you keep asking, how do I become that? The answer is this: you strike the bell. You become the one who answers, not waits. You become the one who rises, not reasons, because if you don't hear the bell now, you'll hear it later, but by then, it might be a eulogy for the life you never lived. You think the fight starts when your feet hit the floor, but it starts in the dark, when your body whispers, stay, and your soul begs, go. That's the war, and it's brutal. There's no applause for it, no medal for choosing movement over stillness, no crowd watching you whisper, not today, to the part of you that wants to give in. But that fight, the one you think no one sees, that's the one that builds the person the world eventually can't ignore. Chris Downey was an architect designing skylines when he lost his sight. The world dimmed, his vision vanished. But every morning, before the city woke, he trained. Tactile maps, cane drills, blind walking meditations through the soundscape of his neighborhood. He said, I needed to greet the world before it made noise. I needed to own the morning, otherwise it owned me. And there's Yusra Mardini. She didn't plan to be a hero. She was a Syrian refugee, swimming a sinking boat to safety. Later, in a foreign camp, she trained at 5 a.m, no coach, no pool, no cheering crowds, just instinct and memory. Parking lot tiles for diving markers. The water didn't care where I came from, she said. Only that I kept showing up. These aren't morning routines, they're morning resurrections. And here's the science behind the miracle. Your reticular activating system, the gatekeeper of your brain, is recalibrated every morning. It decides what to focus on, what to ignore, what to label as threat, opportunity, noise, or purpose. And guess what it listens to first? Your first action. Open your phone and it filters for dopamine, distraction, self-comparison. Breathe with intention and it filters for clarity, presence, ownership. Move with purpose and it filters for identity, urgency, growth. So, if you're wondering why your life still feels stuck, why your habits aren't sticking, why you feel productive but hollow, it's because your mornings are setting a thermostat for mediocrity. This is the battlefield, not your inbox, not your meetings, not your to-do list. It's the moment you wake and decide what kind of world your mind should see. And here, right here, is where most people drop off. They watch, they nod, they feel a spark, and then they go back to the cycle. Don't leave now, not because this video needs you, because you need you, awake, aware, and unwilling to walk backward into a day that doesn't deserve your highest self. Make the choice now, not later, not tomorrow, not when you feel ready. Make it while you're uncertain, while your hands are still shaking. Because no one wins the morning after it's past. The bell is ringing, pick a side, then make the morning regret ever doubting you. You're waiting for a breakthrough, but breakthroughs don't come in lightning. They come in friction, in the quiet grind of repetition, in the small sacred choices no one applauds, but your future self depends on. You keep asking for transformation, but transformation doesn't show up at your door. It's built, brick by brick, morning by morning. There's an old story about a mystic named Lala. She was born into rules, rituals, and obedience, but one dawn she walked into the snow with nothing, no name, no clothes, no attachment, just a prayer on her lips and fire in her chest. People called her mad. She called herself free. She said, "Every dawn I broke the clay pot of yesterday. I drank only the fire of now." She wasn't performing a routine. She was declaring a new self. That's what a real ritual is. Not a checklist, not a productivity hack. It's a rebellion against who you no longer wish to be. The paradox is, nothing seems to change while you're doing it. And then, suddenly, everything does. Because your brain doesn't respond to hope. It responds to what you repeat with emotion. Neuroscience calls it dopamine anchoring, pairing focused action with identity-rich emotion. Every time you rise with intention, you leave a breadcrumb trail for your nervous system. And if you follow it long enough, you find yourself. You journal not to reflect, but to declare. You stretch not to loosen the body, but to tighten your focus. You breathe not to relax, but to return. Because every act you perform with reverence becomes a vote for your becoming. And when that becomes who you are, when the flame of morning becomes part of your breath, you don't just win the day. You stop asking for permission to exist in it. You become the fire. You become the silence before the noise. You become the reason tomorrow is different from today. So stop waiting for the lightning. Start striking the match. But what happens when the fire fades, when you've been doing everything right, waking early, journaling, meditating, grinding, and still you feel numb, the spark is gone, the ritual feels mechanical, you're moving, but it's hollow, focused, but not fulfilled. This is what no one prepares you for, that even the sacred can become survival, that even the discipline can become a disguise. There's a man in Tokyo named Hitoshi Takano, 12 years, flawless morning routines, 5 a.m. alarms, breathwork, cold showers, running, journaling, no breaks, until he collapsed. Panic attacks, detachment, full emotional burnout. He said, "I had mastered my time, but I had lost my soul." That's when you realize you can perfect the system so much that you forget why you built it. Discipline without direction is just elegant self-destruction. This is the breaking point, the cliff you walk over with your eyes open. And here's where most people walk away, not from the routine, but from themselves. But what if this wasn't failure? What if it was an invitation? There's a line from Hafiz, "You must sleep like the earth sleeps before it brings flowers. Even soil must retreat, even the tide must fall." And here's the science to back it. When you pause with intentional stillness, your nervous system switches from the sympathetic fight or flight mode to the parasympathetic. That's the only state where creativity returns, where memory integrates, where the soul can actually speak. So if you've been burning out under your own ambition, don't quit. Return. Return to what matters. Return to breath, not branding. Return to becoming, not performance. Your ritual is not there to prove something, it's there to remind you that the person who shows up still exists, even when they are tired. And sometimes rising doesn't mean moving, it means listening. It means remembering who you were before the world convinced you to run from yourself. You're not here to dominate the day by force. You're here to answer the bell, even when it rings from a deeper place. You've been told to build habits, stack routines, master your mornings, but no one told you what happens when those habits stop being tools and start becoming mirrors, because eventually you stop asking, what should I do today? And you start asking, who am I when I do this? That's when everything changes. Your journal isn't a productivity tool, it's a memory of the self you're trying not to lose. Your morning walk isn't for cardio, it's communion with the part of you that still believes something better is possible. And that cup of water, that breath, that stretch, they're not about health, they're about coming back to life. You don't do the ritual anymore, you become it. There's a woman history barely remembers, Rosalia Morales. She wasn't famous, she wasn't wealthy. She was a widow in rural Mexico who woke up at 4 a.m. for 27 years. She ground corn by hand, sewed clothes, prayed, made breakfast, raised 5 children alone, no social media, no validation, just one sacred act after another, each morning without fail. Her son became a lawyer, wrote about her years later. He said, "She never made history, but her morning made me." That's what real domination looks like, not viral, not loud, not praised, but irreversible, because the most powerful transformation is the one that doesn't beg for attention. It simply becomes undeniable, and the science is still with you. When you perform a morning ritual with intention, your brain begins to myelinate those pathways. It hardwires identity into behavior, not through pressure, but through precision, not through hype, but through harmony. You don't need a louder alarm, you need a quieter mind. You don't need more structure, you need more presence inside the one you already built. Because domination doesn't come from what you do once, it comes from what you do when no one is watching. It comes from what you do when it's no longer easy or even exciting. It comes from the person you become when every cell in your body says stop, and you keep going anyway. You become the bell, you become the match, you become the silence that resets the world. So if the fire's been fading, this is your moment to remember you are not lost. You're simply being reshaped again and again and again. Every sunrise is a sculptor, and you are the clay that never breaks. There's a moment, if you've done this right, when the morning stops being something you conquer and becomes the place you come home to. Not because you're perfect, not because you have everything figured out, but because you finally understand this isn't about domination anymore. It's about devotion, the kind that doesn't need an audience, the kind that wakes you before the world demands it, the kind that pulls you out of bed not with fear, but with remembrance. Remembrance of the person who almost gave up. Remembrance of the younger you watching from the future, hoping you'd rise. Remembrance of the part of you that got lost in the noise but never stopped trying to find the silence. Simone Weil wrote, "The future is made of the same stuff as the present. Win now or lose forever." And now you see it clearly. The ritual you thought was about success was always about love. Love for who you are when you're stripped of ambition. Love for the smallest choice that becomes your legacy. Love for this one quiet, unrepeatable moment before the world interrupts. You've come this far. And now you don't just rise, you resurrect. You don't just journal, you transmit. You don't just stretch or breathe or walk. You witness the sacred. This is no longer a practice, it's a prophecy. You are not here to finish the day. You are here to begin the becoming. To be the one who answers instead of defers, to be the one who acts instead of avoids, to be the one who makes morning into memory, not just for you, but for the next soul who needs to believe again. So share this, not for the algorithm, for the one who's still sleeping inside themselves. Drop a comment, not to be heard, but to echo. Tell us what your ritual is now, what you're rising toward, what you've burned and what you're rebuilding from the ashes, because you weren't born to repeat days. You were born to write dawn into your DNA, and if you listen to this daily, you won't just win the morning. You'll become the dawn that never ends.